Well, it is time for our first hot topic. And Suncoast men, I don't know if you'll find this good news or bad news, but just know we are outnumbered here on the Suncoast. In the latest U.S. Census estimate, women over the age of 60 outnumbered men by nearly 20% here on the Suncoast. The number of women retiring to Florida has risen 40% in Sarasota County and 50% in Manatee County in the last 8 years. And these women aren't just ladies who lunch. A recent article in the Herald Tribune points out that many women are less willing to retire than their husbands. They have worked all their lives and they're not willing to take a back seat now. Sociologists say this all makes sense. Women have never retired, even in the old days when their husbands retired. They still cooked and cleaned as always. Today, women just have more choices in their lives. What do you think about this?
Well, women make 70% of what a man makes. So they can't afford to retire as early if they're on their own.
Yeah, she's right.
Sure.
But I don't think that's the reason in most cases. I think it's just the thrill of being able to make that second try, live another chapter in your life after you come down here.
And Linda, I don't see you retiring, and I'm glad. But is it because, does it have something to do with how much you love what you do?
Yes, it does. I looked at that picture of that man sitting there with a newspaper and those two guys playing checkers or chess and said, that is not what I ever want to do.
And Marcia, you certainly don't slow down. So
No.
what do you think about this
Well,
study,
she's
these
just a
numbers?
kid.
Yeah. Well, I'm working, I think, harder and longer today than I was even 20 years ago. But it's because of a passion. But I also think that one thing that enters in on it, and I know that Linda and I share this, is that we've lost our husbands. And so when they talk about these percentages, there are more women here that are without their husbands. And, we're not quite sure if we ever want to remarry again.
I'm quite sure. I never want to remarry.
Well, I don't want the guy to bring in the lazy boy into my family room. He just better keep right on going. But I do think that enters in on it also. And I think also women are much more inventive. They're creative. They do have passions. And they want to keep going.
Yeah, I agree with what Marcia said. I think it's all about having a passion. Like, I'm only 21, so I'm obviously nowhere near retirement. But I look at Marcia and Linda, who are still working because they love what they do. And I'm like, hey, I want that to be me when I'm older.
I have a lot of women in my life who I know through the Y and through the classes I teach that they have retired and their husbands retired a little later. And now that the husband has retired, they are going back to work because their husbands are making them crazy.
Yeah, they can't stand it. They cannot stand
and
it.
they had a full day of working out and doing this and this and this. And now the husbands are there going, okay, what are we doing today? And the ladies are like, I have my routine. I've been doing this for years. So it's interesting to see if someone else retires in the home, how much that changes. Well, speaking of home, homeschooling is growing in popularity. The National Home Education Research Institute says homeschool numbers are increasing as much as 8% a year. Research shows people choose to homeschool for many different reasons. About 2/3 say it's for religious purposes. But increasingly, parents say they are concerned about bullying. Also, they're concerned about the quality of teaching and needing a more individualized education plan. Critics often say that some parents lack the background to successfully educate their kids, including a very broad statement this week from bishops of the Catholic Church. All right, so Kaylee, you were homeschooled.
Yes.
So, you can certainly speak for your experience, but what would you say to critics that say, the parents might not be, qualified?
And there are a lot of parents who kind of go into it without knowing what they're doing, and there are specific reasons, like it had mentioned, bullying is a huge thing, and people who are very into athletics and they want to pursue a professional athletic career, a lot of them are homeschooled. So oftentimes the parents aren't really sure of what they're going into, but there are a lot of tools that can help them in those areas. So there's something called a co-op, and it's once a week. Homeschool kids go to one homeschool mom's house, and the homeschool mom will teach all of those kids, and the moms will rotate on and off. And then they can give each other ideas, teach each other how to do lesson plans. And there's also like curriculum sales. So you can go to a curriculum sale, and they are in every single area, especially in Florida. And you can actually purchase curriculum, and it'll walk you through the steps that you want to teach. And there are so many different
This
ways
just
that
blows
you
my
can do
mind hearing this, because I don't know about you, Linda and Marcia, but I always had the perception of homeschooling being kids sitting in the living room with a parent doing a lesson plan.
Yes.
But these co-ops and these organizations, it isn't necessarily
yeah.
homeschooling. It sounds more like creating networks of different homeschooling parents.
Exactly, and they open up gateways to when you're older. Like I dual enrolled, which is why I'm in a full-time job at 21, is because I dual enrolled, you know, when I was in 11th and 12th grade of high school, and because I didn't have to go to school, so I just went to community college, and I was able to get 2 years of college under my belt before I even graduated high school.
I like the idea that you come together with parents with a lot of kids, because I think one of the main things you learn in school is how to get along with other people
Yep.
and how you're not always going to be first. And at home, you're always first. But in this group of kids with the other mom, you're not going to be number
I will
one
say,
all the time.
I definitely met a lot of people through it, and they even have a central homeschool convention in Orlando. So I met kids when I was from Fort Lauderdale. I met kids from Sarasota, from Gainesville,
Wow.
from Orlando, and I was able to network and stayed friends with them.
So it does change kind of our perception of homeschooling, and certainly as those numbers rise, it's going to continue to evolve. Interesting stuff. I love knowing a little more about it. Speaking of, we started our morning today with pumpkin, and it is the season for everything pumpkin. Just when you think you might have seen it all, something new surfaces. Now Buffalo Wild Wings is joining in with their new pumpkin barbecue ale sauce for wings. It's based off the ever-popular pumpkin spice beer, and Twitter gave it some mixed reviews, with some saying, "Don't knock it until you try it." All right, would you try this?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
Well, I was skeptical about the pumpkin cereal, and I tried that, and I liked it.
All
So
right.
I would at least try it and give it a go, and then if I didn't like it, I'd be like, not for me.
Based upon that, I think I'll take a pass.
All right, we are still a table divided.